Deputy Clare Daly is question number 11.
Thanks, Corla. Minister, a number of deputies on this side of the House and indeed from your own party have been involved in a cross-party ad hoc group in relation to prisoner issues in relation to Northern Ireland, and we are deeply concerned at the deteriorating situation in Maghaberry prison in relation to serious issues of prisoner welfare, and we'd like to know what steps you have taken to raise these issues with your counterparts in the Northern Ireland Government and Britain.
Thank you, that's Cora. There has been an increase in tensions in the prison in recent weeks. This is due in part to the issuing of threats by prisoners against the prison service officials in the context where a serving prison officer, David Black, was murdered by dissidents in November 2012. It's also related to recent construction work in Row House intended to increase the space available to prisoners in the separated regime for association. However, it appears the well-meaning intentions behind the works were not effectively communicated in advance to inmates. A protest by a small number of prisoners on the 2nd of February ended with both the Northern Ireland Minister for Justice, David Ford, and the Director General of the Northern Ireland Prison Service, Sue McAllister, reporting no injuries to staff or prisoners. I am aware that some prisoners have said that they were injured during the protest. Members of the independent assessment team have since met with prisoners and prison management to hear their perspectives on the protest and how best to take things forward. In spite of the increased tension, I take some encouragement from renewed calls by both the Northern Ireland Prison Service and prisoner representatives for the full implementation of the Stocktake report. It's important that this work continue with the goodwill and support of all the relevant stakeholders. The Northern Ireland Prison Service has reiterated its commitment to the implementation of the report's recommendations. It would certainly facilitate progress if all threats against those working in the prison administration were lifted. All such threats are completely unacceptable and serve only to frustrate the process of improving the atmosphere in the prison. The Independent Assessment Group continues with their engagement to encourage the implementation of their recommendations and would be open to a meeting with the Deputy to discuss ongoing concerns. I have discussed prison issues with the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland on a number of occasions, most recently on the 11th of February. I also met in January with a member of the Independent Assessment Group, which completed the Stocktake report of September 2014. My officials continuously monitor the situation at Maghaberry, including through their contact with their counterparts in Northern Ireland Office and officials in the Northern Ireland Prison Service, as well as members of the Independent Assessment Group, who have been keeping me closely informed of all developments as they occur.
Thank you, Deputy.
I think it's important to say that the deputies who have attended are, visit loyalist and Republican prisoners and believe that our intervention actually and that approach is probably one of the best ways of reducing tensions and threats by respecting the rights of people in the prison system. And it's been our direct knowledge that in actual fact the Stocktake agreement has not been implemented in the manner in which it was supposed to, and that concessions which were supposedly to be given in terms of a reduction in controlled movement and access on the landings and so on were being interpreted in a manner which actually meant a knockback in prisoner conditions, which obviously led to an escalating situation. We will be very concerned as well that there are elements who have a vested interest, both from the security services and the prison service point of view as well, in keeping the status quo as well. There's been some incitement, if you like, of prison officers from some hardline elements in the unions community, which is not helpful either. And we really think that the Minister here has to step in on this, not accept just what's been said by the establishment, but really get behind it, because we are deeply concerned I suppose, behind the scenes about what is likely to happen. The fact that chaplaincy services were not allowed into the prison on the day after the riot intervention, and that scenario is not good. Legal people were not invited or allowed in there either, which obviously legitimised the concerns of people and led us to believe that they are particularly vulnerable. So we will ignore this situation at our peril.
Minister, to conclude.
Could I say in reply to the Deputy that the Prison Service has accepted that the Stocktake report recommendation that forum meetings should take place at least every 2 months, and indeed with an agreed agenda in advance. I acknowledge that there have been some difficulties in achieving agreement on a mutually accepted chair of the Prisoners' Forum, but I'm sure the Deputy will agree with me that it's absolutely essential that prisoners engage with the Prisoners' Forum, because I believe that the resolution of these difficulties is through engagement and is through the type of forum that's envisaged. Could I acknowledge the work of the independent assessment group? I know Deputy Daly and others have been very much involved in this issue, particularly over the last few months. But could I suggest to Deputy Daly that she engage directly with members of the independent assessment group who would be anxious to meet with any member of the House on this issue? And I would urge that that course of action be taken.
Thank you. That concludes